and not that there's not a demand for an open and transparent GPSA process.
Thank you. Next question would be going to Katie. What do you think the legislative platform of GPSA would be, and how would you work with a team of people to realize that?
Great question. So I worked sort of with the lobby committee as GPSA grants chair, and one of the things that I was concerned about was funding for the GRD grant, which is $5,000 to conduct student research. However, I think that something novel happened this year, and what happened was the lobby committee, and I was not part of this effort, put together a survey and sent it out to students, and we actually got 138 responses, which doesn't sound like a lot out of a graduate population of more than 6,000 students. But if you think about it, that's maybe, you know, a fourth of the number of people who vote in an election every year. So we got a huge response from those who are engaged with the GPSA, and that legislative priorities survey asked students, what do you care about? And they care about cutting costs to the administration and athletics, they care about accountability, they care about research, they care about being recognized as employees for the hard work that we are doing as TAs and GAs and RAs at this university. And so what the lobby committee did is they took the answers to those surveys and they turned around and actually addressed those concerns up in Santa Fe. And I couldn't have been prouder to have been part of that group pursuing research funding for graduate students, because that was one of the priorities that came out of the survey. And I think that one of the most important things that a president can do is make sure that the communication with their lobby committee in Santa Fe is excellent. That those students are well positioned, who have the connections to talk to the right legislators, to know who's on the finance committee, to know, you know, who is making the decisions that affect graduate and professional students. As GPSA grants chair, as GPSA president, I would hope that I would conduct that survey again. I would hope that the results would reflect what I believe are graduate and professional student values, which include research. I would pursue that. I also would absolutely pursue being recognized as employees of this university. That is a bill that was before the Senate Bill 400, to recognize graduate students as employees. And there was, I think that is one of the, we need to be recognized for the hard work that we do. We need to be recognized for the value we have for this institution, and the fact that we do teach and support 40% of the classes at this university. So that would absolutely be a legislative priority of mine.
All right, thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
Joseph?
So I do have a very specific plan with certain things that I would want to implement as GPSA president. First would be, obviously, like I talked about in my opening statement, working on the structure of GPSA, and more specifically, reducing the administrative spending within GPSA. I think if you look at a graph of the GPSA spending, it's well over 50% of the funding stays within the organization. And I think more accountability needs to be put on that process to allow more students' input in where that money is going, and to make sure that it's being spent on the priorities of GPSA and not on overhead and administrative costs. More specifically, that would roll into different funding processes and making sure that we focus on allowing more funding to be allocated from GPSA into student research through the grants processes. In addition to that, I think it's necessary for GPSA to have a more accountable and transparent funding process, and this is across the board. I think that to allow student groups the opportunity to receive GPSA funding is absolutely vital. GPSA needs to create better funding processes within the organization and outside of it. The GPSA budget needs to have more oversight and review by the council and not by the president, and that's something that I am firmly in favor of. And I think also we need to make sure that applications are all more accessible to students and student organizations who are applying for GPSA funding. I also think building relationships in the university is absolutely vital. I am willing to fight for graduate and professional student rights and needs, but I don't think that fighting or demanding something is how you get to that answer. You need to be willing to compromise and sit down and listen and see what the other side of the table is arguing as well before you go in and demanding and fighting. because no one's going to listen to you if all you do is fight. And as part of that, I think it is necessary to hold the administration accountable, and I think that that is only possible through conducive and productive relationships that are built through a long period of time within GPSA with different parts of the university, and specifically the administration. Today in the Albuquerque Journal, on the front page actually, was an article citing the 8% tuition increase that's expected at the university. But part of that said that the budget shortfall had been reduced to $4 million by the administration. And part of that tuition increase is to fund specifically more faculty positions and graduate teaching positions as well. And I think it's necessary that we keep the administration honest, and if they promise that, to make sure that they are held accountable.
All right, thank you, Joseph. Jacob, when you're ready.
Thank you for the question. This is my favorite question we've had so far. I think that in the short term, it's very important to keep working on protecting the state's appropriation to support the graduate research RPSP grant. I think that's of prime importance to the undergraduate student body. I also think that the proposals that would give graduate student employees collective bargaining rights by virtue of making them employees of this institution is an important proposal to keep working on, and I commend Katie and everyone else who was up there. We talked when I was in the speaker's office about that proposal, and it was a good one. At the same time, I think that I want to give you a sense of what I'll work towards as president, and that's really engaging in a broader discussion. And that discussion is oriented around two areas, and one is the tuition question. You know, this year we see an 8% increase in tuition. And that's the byproduct of the absence of an articulated policy at the state level on how we will manage the growth in tuition as a state. Other states have taken action to control that growth, but we haven't. And that's why every year we face this same challenge, these same divisive debates, and we're left with the same problem, which is the universities just have to raise tuition. So I think that one of the things I would advocate for is that a tuition policy task force be appointed by the Legislative Education Study Committee and have representatives from the various 4- and 2-year institutions in this state to really sit down and tackle this issue once and for all, and make recommendations to the legislature and to the universities on how we can better plan and control the cost of attendance in New Mexico. We're a poor state, and if we don't take action, we're going to exclude more and more of our students, and unfortunately, those will be disproportionately students of color. Secondly, I think that our state has to address the research question. And again, this will require a collaborative discussion at the state level. Again, engaging actors in the legislature and from other universities to move away from the pork barrel politicized RPSP process, and to get us to a place where we have a stable, dependable, and constant stream of revenue coming from the state to support the research mission of its 3 research universities. Those are noble goals, but I think that they're ones that we can work on and that we need to work on if we're ever going to solve these problems.
Thank you, Jake. Patricia, you ready?
Thank you. This question is very important because it speaks to style, and it speaks to leadership, and it speaks to how it is that we're going to be able to pull everyone together to be that has to be pulled together to be able to come up with the legislative agenda, with the legislative platform. This is not my agenda. This is not my platform. This will be the platform of the Graduate and Professional Student Association. So how do we go about doing that? It's the process. It goes back to that. And I had recommended and I had suggested all along in the 2 years that I've been involved with the GPSA Council, this message and this concern has resonated. How do we go about, together with ASUNM, together with all of the 41 plus organizations and departments and schools that are represented in the council, bringing this together, bringing this about. And we do that through forming a joint commission, number one. I think we've already begun the process with ASUNM, and we've talked about how we can forge a relationship with the ASUNM so that we come together as a student body and present, identify 2 or 3 major goals, which can be translated into our legislative agenda. And then what do we do to support those as a joint body? And we do this by formalizing our relationship. But more importantly, for Graduate and Professional Student Association, it's all about the council. The council is the representative body for GPSA. The president, I believe, influences the administration, facilitates these processes for the students' voices to be heard, but doesn't dictate, doesn't set that agenda, does not set that platform. It's the GPSA Council. They're the legislative arm. They're the representative body of the graduate students. And it's important, and I, in my style of leadership, it's important for me to be able to go to GPSA Council and elicit that information from them, find out what they desire to be these major issues and concerns. And it starts also by promoting the survey instrument. I think the survey instrument is very important. We use that for PAGSA, and that's how we generate what we're going to do every semester, every year, in terms of what we're going to provide the students, gauging what the students' needs are. And so promoting the instruments with GPSA Council to bring about, again, that sense of engagement, that sense of inclusiveness in the process. If you don't afford that process, then it continues to be a struggle between the legislative arm and the executive branch. And sometimes we have to bridge that at some point.
Thank you, Patricia. Any rebuttals? Kate?
So I just wanted to briefly state that recognizing graduate student employees does not necessarily mean that collective bargaining would happen. Not that I'm against that, but I'm sort of neutral with regard to that. I think that what it would immediately do is make sure that we could have resources at this university, such as third-person mediation that employees get that students don't currently get. Seeing as we're in the College of Education, I did want to touch on two other issues, which is the tuition credit, which is a tax on students. I think that we should all, as students, be lobbying to end that. I also think that the lottery scholarship is not going to serve the students that we were hoping that it would. The median scholarship of the median income of a family receiving the lottery scholarship is $100,000. So we are not serving those students who need the help the most in terms of access to higher education. So I think that I support the idea behind the lottery scholarship, but it's not necessarily doing what it should. So I believe that as graduate student teachers of undergraduates, we should be concerned with that.
Thank you. Joseph, I believe.
No,
okay. Jada.
Thank you. I'd actually like to respond to Patricia in that, it's important to be collaborative, and it's important for people to be engaged in developing a set of priorities. But I think at the end of the day, leadership does mean being able to engage people in a discussion about the important and challenging issues that face graduate students at the University of New Mexico, and having the courage of conviction to stand up and to propose and to articulate a vision and action steps for addressing those challenges. And then if the group decides not to go with them, well, then you work from there. But I think that it's important to have a president who has that vision and who's willing to stand up and say, it's time to take the lead on these challenges. It's time to make real change. It's time to move past the same debates that we've had year after year after year, do something different, try something different, and really bring everybody to the table who needs to be there. Thank you.
All right, Patricia or Jake, Joseph again.